Welcome to my channel, and today I want to share a story that begins with a quiet river and a powerful secret buried for decades. A story where one woman's search for truth shakes an entire empire, where land is taken, voices are silenced, and courage rises from the place no one expected. This is a story about memory, justice, and a fight that was never meant to be won, but refused to be lost. So stay with me until the end, because every moment leads to a truth that changes everything. Let's start. The river tore through Mavuno village with a ferocity that seemed almost alive, its dark, churning waters slamming against rocks and swallowing stray branches as if hunting something. Lena Adebayo, a barefoot village girl of 19, was carrying a basket of vegetables from the morning market when the chaos struck. Her simple dress clung to her slender frame, damp with sweat from the humid afternoon. Then she heard it, a frantic splash, followed by a strangled cry for help. A man, tall, dark-skinned, and dressed in a soaked suit far too expensive for these parts, was thrashing helplessly against the current. His wrist bore a heavy golden watch that glinted in the sun, and his expensive shoes bobbed above the waves like helpless rafts. The villagers froze in shock along the muddy riverbank, some shouting warnings, others simply staring, paralyzed by fear. "Don't go in," someone shouted. But Lena didn't hesitate. She dropped her basket and ran toward a long, weathered wooden pole leaning against a tree. It was rough, splintered in places, but sturdy enough. Dropping to her knees at the river's edge, she shoved it into the frothing water. "Grab it! Hold on!" she cried, her voice quivering but fierce. For a moment, the man's fingers brushed the pole, and panic surged through Lena as the river yanked at both of them. Her arms burned, her palms splitting against the splinters, her legs slipping in the mud. She dug her toes into the ground, muscles trembling with every pull. "Please, don't let go," she whispered, tears blurring her vision. Finally, the man's grip tightened, and together, inch by painful inch, Lena dragged him toward the rocks. The villagers rallied at last, two men grabbing her waist to keep her from sliding in. With a final desperate heave, she pulled him from the water. He lay on the muddy shore, chest heaving, coughing river water, eyes half closed, shivering violently in his ruined suit. Lena collapsed beside him, her hands cut and bleeding from the pole, her chest heaving with exhaustion. For a moment, no one spoke. Then he stirred slightly, whispering hoarsely, "Don't call anyone." Confused, Lena glanced at the ring on his hand, a heavy gold band that gleamed in the dimming sunlight. His clothes, though ruined, spoke of wealth, of a world far removed from Mavuno village. Her heart raced. Who was this man? Nurse Neka arrived soon after, guiding villagers to carry him carefully into the tiny clinic. Lena followed, hands wrapped in clean cloth to staunch the bleeding. Inside, the man lay on a narrow bed, breathing shallow but steady. "He's lucky," Neka murmured. "Another few minutes, and we wouldn't be talking." Lena watched uneasily as his eyes fluttered open. "You're the girl," he said faintly. "Yes," Lena replied softly. "You're safe. You're in our clinic." He tried to sit up, wincing, and Neka snapped gently, "Don't move, you're injured!" "Did anyone call the police?" he asked, his voice tight. "No," Lena said quickly. "You asked me not to." A flicker of relief crossed his face, immediately shadowed by tension. "Good. Keep it that way," he murmured. "Why?" Lena asked, but he didn't answer. Silence hung heavy, broken only by the soft murmur of the river outside. "What's your name?" Neka asked firmly. "Jelani," he replied after a pause. "Just Jelani." Lena's chest tightened at the incomplete tone, the air of secrecy surrounding him. She didn't fully understand, but she sensed the weight of danger that clung to him like a shadow. By evening, Lena insisted that Jelani stay in her small home at the edge of the village. Her grandmother, Mama Ifeoma, stiffened when she saw him. "No," she said flatly. "He almost died, Grandma," Lena pleaded. "Just one night, please." Mama Ifeoma studied Jelani's face, eyes narrowing. Something flickered across her expression, recognition, perhaps fear. "One night," she said finally. That night, as Lena sat nearby watching him rest on a thin mattress, Jelani's voice was quiet. "Why were you in that river?" she asked. "Running. From a life that doesn't forgive mistakes, he said, gaze fixed on the ceiling. Lena didn't understand fully, but she felt it. The weight of someone carrying a world of consequences, far larger than the village. Morning came quietly, the air thick with unease. Lena brewed weak tea and porridge, careful not to wake him. Jelani's eyes opened slowly, meeting hers. "You didn't have to stay up all night," he murmured. "I wanted to," Lena said. "You kept shifting like you were in pain." Before she could answer further, Mama Ifeoma turned on the small radio, and a sharp voice cut through the morning air. "Breaking news! Billionaire heir Jelani King has been reported missing after failing to appear at a scheduled board meeting yesterday." Lena froze. The spoon clattered to the floor. Jelani sat up too quickly, wincing, his face pale. It was true. The man she had saved from death was not just anyone. He was a billionaire, a hunted man, and her life was now tangled irrevocably with his. The morning sunlight stretched over Mavuno village, casting long shadows across the dusty paths and thatched roofs. Lena moved quietly in her small kitchen, her thoughts tangled with fear and curiosity. Jelani King, the man she had rescued from the river, lay resting in her guest room, his sharp breathing a reminder of how close he had come to death. Lena had spent the night awake, replaying every detail of the river, every desperate pull on that splintered pole. Outside, the village stirred. Chickens clucked, children ran barefoot, and the market began to hum with activity. Yet, beneath the usual rhythm, an undercurrent of tension wound through the village. Rumors were already spreading. A city man, soaked and unconscious, had been brought into Mavuno village. Whispers of wealth, danger, and secrets floated from hut to hut. Lena took a deep breath and carried a small tray of water and porridge to Jelani. He stirred as she entered, eyes focusing on her with a mix of gratitude and wariness. "You didn't have to bring me anything," he said softly, his voice still weak. "I wanted to," Lena replied. "You risked your life, even if you don't remember it now." He gave a faint smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. There was a shadow there, a story he was holding back. "Lena," he began cautiously, "you need to understand my presence here. It's dangerous." "I know," Lena said, setting the tray down. "I saw the men outside the road yesterday, and the radio. Your disappearance." Jelani's jaw tightened. "Victor Hale, he doesn't fight with fists. He uses laws, papers, influence, and he doesn't fail." "Why here?" "Why Mavuno?" Lena asked, glancing toward the window. The river beyond glimmered in the morning sun, deceptively calm. Jelani's gaze followed hers. Rivers mean land. Land means control. And Mavuno village sits on something he wants. Lena's heart pounded. "Something the village owns?" "Yes," he said quietly. "Something they've tried to claim before. I barely escaped once. If I hadn't, you might not be standing here." The weight of his words pressed heavily on her. She had thought the danger ended with the river, but now it had followed him to her home, to her village. Mama Ifeoma appeared in the doorway, arms folded, eyes sharp. "Your presence here puts everyone at risk, Jelani," she said flatly. "I understand," he replied, "but I can't go back yet, not safely." "Then stay," Lena said, before she could stop herself. "Just for one night, please." Her grandmother studied her, then Jelani, finally nodding. "One night," she said, voice firm. Later that morning, Lena sat beside Jelani as he rested. He lifted a hand weakly, and she noticed the heavy golden ring glinting in the sunlight. "That ring. It's important to you," she said gently. "It belonged to my father," Jelani admitted. "I can't let it fall into the wrong hands." Their conversation was interrupted by distant voices. Lena's ears perked as she caught the faint sound of a motor approaching. Through the window, she saw two men in crisp shirts stepping from a black SUV, clipboards in hand. Their eyes scanned the village carefully before landing on Jelani. "They found you," Lena whispered. Jelani's expression remained calm, though tension rippled beneath the surface. "Not yet, but they will." Lena's mind raced. "Victor Hale?" Jelani nodded. "He doesn't need violence to take what he wants. He uses pressure, influence, paperwork. Here, he needs someone to notice the land." Mama Ifeoma emerged from the doorway, broom in hand. "This village has doors that should remain closed," she said. Her voice trembled slightly, but her words carried authority. "Your world does not belong here." Lena's stomach tightened. The peaceful village she had known all her life now felt fragile, as if any wrong step could shatter it completely. She turned back to Jelani. "Then we need to be careful," she said. He studied her closely, admiration flickering in his dark eyes. "You're braver than most people I know." "I'm not brave," Lena whispered. "I'm scared, but I won't let anyone harm my home or my family." Jelani leaned back, exhaustion evident in his frame. "Your courage. It protects more than just this village. It protects me too." The tension outside grew. The two men from the SUV spoke to villagers, asking questions, noting names, pretending it was a routine assessment for river development. But Lena knew better. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes. They were looking for weaknesses, opportunities, entry points. By afternoon, the market buzzed with speculation. People whispered about the city, about wealth, about danger. Lena felt eyes on her wherever she went. Children stared, women whispered, even the men glanced toward her with curiosity and concern. When she returned home, she found Jelani resting but restless. "They're patient," he said quietly. "They'll wait. And when they see an opening..." He didn't finish the sentence, but Lena understood. They were waiting for a moment of weakness. "Then we won't give it to them," Lena said firmly. "We'll be ready." Jelani looked at her with a mixture of awe and relief. "You've changed everything," he said. "Your presence. It makes them unpredictable. And right now, unpredictability is our greatest weapon." That night, Lena sat by the river, its waters calm under the moonlight, reflecting stars that seemed impossibly bright. She traced her fingers over the splintered wooden pole she had used to save Jelani, remembering every desperate tug, every scream that had left her throat raw. Somehow, the river had not only carried him away, it had brought him into her life, into her world. And Lena knew that their journey together, fraught with danger and uncertainty, had only just begun. The following morning, the air in Mavuno village was heavy with tension. Lena moved silently through the small paths, carrying a basket of fresh vegetables to her grandmother's hut. Each step felt measured, cautious, as though the eyes of the village were upon her. Even the children playing along the riverbank seemed aware that something had shifted, though they couldn't name it. Inside her modest home, Jelani stirred. His face was pale, but his dark eyes were sharp, scanning the small room as if he could sense every movement outside. Lena set down the tray of tea and porridge, glancing at him carefully. "You need to rest," she said softly. "I can't," Jelani replied, wincing as he adjusted his position on the thin mattress. "Every moment I stay, Victor Hale's network is mapping this place. Every word, every glance, every person in this village. They're all being watched." Lena felt a chill run down her spine. "Then what can we do?" He exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face. "We protect, we hide, and we make sure the wrong people never know what's here." The words made Lena's stomach twist. Hide, protect. She was just a village girl. How could she possibly shield a billionaire from the city's reach? Yet, beneath her fear, a spark of determination lit her chest. She had pulled him from death once before, and she could do it again. Mama Ifeoma entered, her brow furrowed. "Lena, Jelani," she said. "You must understand something. This village has secrets older than any city empire. Doors that were never meant to open. And you," she looked sharply at Jelani, "you are carrying a storm into it." "I don't belong here," Jelani said quietly. "Not yet, but I'm trapped in it anyway, and now, Lena, your courage puts you in the center." Lena's fingers tightened around the tray she held. "Then we face it together. Whatever it is, we protect this village. And we protect you." Jelani's lips curved slightly, a faint smile breaking the tension. "You're braver than anyone I've ever met," he admitted. "And that scares Victor more than he realizes." The afternoon brought more visitors. 2 men in polished shoes and neatly pressed shirts appeared again, clipboard in hand. Their smiles were practiced, but Lena could see the cold calculation in their eyes. They approached Mama Ifeoma first, presenting papers that seemed innocent but carried a weight of authority. "We are conducting a Riverland review," one said smoothly. "Property ownership classifications may be updated." Mama Ifeoma's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her broom. "We do not need your improvements," she said firmly. "We need peace." The men exchanged a glance, their smiles tight, almost imperceptibly sharp. "Peace is easier to maintain when ownership is clear," one said, voice sweet but threatening. Lena's chest tightened. They were probing, testing, looking for cracks in their resolve. And Jelani's presence, dangerous as it was, had drawn attention that the village had never known. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Lena helped Jelani to a small wooden bench outside. He leaned heavily on her arm, his suit ruined but his dignity intact. "They'll keep coming," he murmured, voice low. "Victor doesn't stop. And his people. They don't need to use violence, paperwork, pressure, influence. That's enough to take everything from this village." Lena's heart ached. "Then we won't give them a chance," she said, voice firm. "We protect what's ours, and we protect you." For a moment, the river seemed to respond. Its dark waters moved quietly in the fading light, reflecting the last golden rays. The same river that had almost taken Jelani now carried the weight of their plans, their determination, their courage. Later that night, Lena sat by the riverbank alone. The wooden pole she had used to save Jelani lay beside her, splintered but strong, a reminder of the power of a single act of bravery. She traced her fingers over the rough wood, thinking of everything that had changed. The city's reach, the billionaire's secrets, the village's hidden strengths. All of it swirled together in a storm of uncertainty. Somewhere in the distance, the lights of the city glimmered faintly, unreachable yet omnipresent. Lena's gaze lingered on the horizon, determination settling in her chest. She had been pulled into a world of wealth, danger, and secrets. But she would not falter, not now, not ever. Jelani as life had been saved by a village girl with nothing but a wooden stick and courage in her heart. Now that courage would be tested in ways Lena had never imagined. And the storm was only just beginning. The next morning in Mavuno village, the air felt heavier than usual, almost suffocating with the quiet tension that had settled over every home and path. Lena woke before dawn, her eyes tracing the first faint light over the river. The water looked calm now, deceptively so, but she knew better. Rivers could be patient, waiting to swallow anything that strayed too close, just as the city waited to take what it wanted. Jelani stirred beside her on the thin mattress, wincing as he shifted. "Morning," he said quietly, his voice still tinged with pain. "Morning," Lena replied softly, offering a small cup of tea. "You slept well?" "I did, but I can't rest completely," Jelani admitted, running a hand through his damp hair. "Victor Hale's people are methodical. They don't rush, they wait. And when they move, the consequences are total." Lena's brow furrowed. "We'll be ready. I'll make sure the village stays safe, no matter what." Jelani's eyes met hers, sharp and assessing. "It's more than the village now. They're already watching you. Your courage, your decisions. They make you unpredictable. And that unpredictability, it complicates their plans." Before Lena could respond, the rumble of a vehicle broke the morning stillness. Two men in crisp suits and polished shoes stepped out of a sleek black SUV, clipboards in hand, their eyes scanning the village with meticulous care. They approached Mama Ifeoma first, presenting documents in a practiced, friendly manner that didn't disguise the threat beneath. "We are conducting a Riverland review," one said smoothly. "Certain properties may be reclassified for development purposes. We require signatures from homeowners." Mama Ifeoma's hands tightened around her broom. "We need peace, not papers," she said firmly. The men exchanged a look, their smiles thin, almost predatory. "Peace is easier to maintain when ownership is clear," the taller one said, voice smooth, precise. Lena's chest tightened. They were probing, testing, searching for the slightest weakness. The village's calm surface had already cracked, and the city's influence seeped like water through the cracks. Jelani's presence only drew more attention. He had tried to disappear, to stay hidden, yet his very existence now painted a target on the village. Lena felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. That afternoon, Lena led Jelani to a quiet part of the village, a small clearing surrounded by dense trees. She carried baskets of herbs and small supplies from her home, and the soft rustle of leaves accompanied their conversation. "We need a plan," she said firmly. "We can't just wait for them to come again. We need to protect the village, and we need to protect you." Jelani nodded. "Agreed. And there's more you need to understand. Victor Hale doesn't need violence to take what he wants. He uses influence, paperwork, even fear. But when he meets unpredictability, it unnerves him. That unpredictability is our ally." Lena's eyes narrowed. "So me here protecting you, it actually helps?" "Exactly," Jelani said, "and it protects the village too. Every move they expect, every hesitation they count on, they won't find it in us." As evening fell, Lena returned to her grandmother's home. Mama Ifeoma watched her silently, the lines of worry deepening on her face. "You're walking into a world you cannot fully see, child," she said softly. "Be careful. The city takes more than it gives." "I know," Lena replied, placing a hand over hers. "But we have to try." Night fell, and with it came the distant hum of the river, the steady pulse of life in the village, and the invisible gaze of those who waited beyond the horizon. Lena traced her fingers over the wooden pole she had used to save Jelani, splintered but enduring, a symbol of courage and determination. Somewhere far away, Victor Hale's network stirred, unaware that the village girl they underestimated held the key to complicating their plans. And Jelani King, billionaire heir, found himself reliant not on money or power, but on the strength of a young village girl whose bravery had already altered his destiny. The storm was coming, and Lena knew they had only just begun to prepare. The city rose before Lena, like a wall of steel and glass, its towers reaching into the clouds as if daring the sun itself to shine. She had never seen anything like it. Traffic flowing in endless streams, people rushing with purpose, and the sharp scent of money, ambition, and power thick in the air. Her heart pounded as she clutched her small bag, the weight of Mavuno village and Jelani's safety pressing against her chest. Beside her, Tiana whispered, "Act like you belong." Lena swallowed hard, nodding, though every instinct told her she did not. Their destination loomed ahead. King Holdings, the headquarters of Jelani's family empire. The glass doors reflected their small, village-accustomed forms, making Lena feel invisible, yet exposed at the same time. They were met immediately by a security guard, suspicion etched in his posture. "Can I help you?" he asked, voice polite but firm. "Yes," Lena said, steadying her voice. "We need to see Jelani King." The guard's eyebrows rose. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's important," Lena said quickly. The guard's smile disappeared. "Then you'll need to leave," he said, voice cool. Before Lena could argue, a tall woman stepped from the doors. She was elegant, impeccably dressed in cream-colored attire, her hair flawless, her smile sharp and calculating. Lena's stomach twisted. Carmen St. James. "Who are you?" Carmen asked, her eyes narrowing on Lena. "My name is Lena Adebayo," she said carefully. "I know Jelani." Carmen's smile was polite but cold. "And why are you seeking him?" He knows me," Lena said softly. Carmen's eyes flicked to the glass doors behind her. Lena caught movement there, Jelani emerging, tall, sharp, the polished confidence of a billionaire exuding from every gesture. He froze when he saw her. In that moment, the distance between the village girl and the city world collapsed, and nothing else seemed to exist. "Lena," Jelani said softly. Relief and something deeper flickered in his eyes. "You're here." "So are you," Lena whispered, voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" Jelani asked, gaze sharp. "I came for my grandmother," Lena said, her voice firm. "She's sick, and men are trying to take our land." Jelani's jaw tightened. Carmen stepped closer, slipping her arm into his. "Jelani, "The board is waiting," she said smoothly. Jelani gently removed her arm and stepped toward Lena. "Come inside," he said quietly. Gasps rippled among staff nearby as he led Lena and Tiana into the building. Inside, the office was vast, quiet, and controlled. Everything gleamed, polished to perfection. Jelani closed the door behind them, turning to Lena. "I didn't expect you to come here," he admitted. "I didn't expect to need to," Lena replied. "But my grandmother needs help, and people are pressuring us." Jelani rubbed his temples. "Victor's people," he said, voice low. "Who?" Lena asked. "Someone who doesn't fight with fists," Jelani explained. "They use influence, papers, pressure, and they never fail." He slid a folder across the desk. "This is a temporary arrangement. Public, not private. You must stay as my official guest at certain events, visible enough to prevent rumors about my stability or decisions. Your values remain yours." Lena's brow furrowed. "I didn't save you to pretend to be something I'm not," she said firmly, standing. "I understand," Jelani said quietly. "Which is why I'm giving you a choice." Outside, Carmen watched, her nails digging into her palm as the tension inside the office mounted. Lena had made herself unpredictable, uncontrollable, a threat in the polished, ordered world Jelani had never left. Jelani stood by the window, hands braced on the glass, watching the city below. "You think money always means ownership," he said finally, voice quiet. "In my world, it usually does," Lena replied. "I didn't offer to pay because I think you're weak," Jelani said, turning to face her. "I offered because your presence changes everything. Cameras, eyes, plans. Your unpredictability protects both me and Mavuno." Lena's chest tightened. "I didn't come here to be a tool," she said. "I know," Jelani said softly. "Which is why I'm giving you a choice. Help me navigate this world, on your terms, so we protect what matters." The city outside continued its relentless pace, oblivious to the small office where two worlds collided. Lena understood that stepping into Jelani's life meant danger, but also power. For the first time, she felt the depth of her own courage, the same courage that had pulled Jelani from the river, now stretched to protect a village and a billionaire's legacy alike. The following morning, Lena awoke in Jelani's spacious city apartment. The sunlight poured through the massive windows, casting a golden glow on the sleek floors and polished surfaces. It was nothing like Mavuno village. The air smelled of ambition, of steel and glass, and of people who never slowed down. Lena clutched her small bag close, feeling the weight of her village and her grandmother's safety pressing on her chest. Jelani stirred beside her, still pale but alert. "Good morning," he said softly, voice low. "I didn't expect you to sleep well." "I slept enough to realize how different this world is," Lena replied, glancing around the apartment. "It's overwhelming." He gave a faint smile. "It can be, but you'll adjust. And soon you'll see that sometimes being unpredictable is more powerful than any wealth or status." Lena frowned. "Unpredictable?" Jelani nodded. "Yes. In a city built on control and predictability, someone who refuses to be manipulated becomes dangerous. For Victor Hale, for Carmen St. James, and even for the board members who expect everything to go as planned. You're dangerous in the best way." Lena's stomach twisted. Dangerous? She had pulled him from a river, protected her village, and yet now she was dangerous in this city? The thought made her both proud and anxious. By late morning, Jelani led Lena and Tiana to their first event, a high-profile charity gala hosted by King Holdings. The building shimmered with gold lights and crystal chandeliers, and Lena felt as though she had stepped into another world entirely. Guests in expensive suits and flowing gowns moved gracefully, sipping wine and speaking in polished tones. Cameras flashed, capturing every detail. Jelani leaned close. "Remember, Lena," he whispered, "your presence matters. You're here to be seen but never controlled. Stay true to yourself, and we maintain unpredictability." Lena nodded, swallowing her nervousness. She felt like an outsider, her simple village dress standing out among designer gowns. Yet she kept her head high, her posture steady, knowing that every movement, Every glance mattered. As they entered the ballroom, Carmen St. James approached, her expression carefully neutral. "Lena," she said smoothly, "I hope you're finding the city interesting." "You could say that," Lena replied, her voice calm despite the nerves twisting in her stomach. Carmen's smile sharpened. "I imagine it's quite a change from Mavuno village." "It is," Lena said, holding her ground. "But I've learned that courage doesn't need a city to shine." Jelani's hand brushed hers briefly, grounding her. "Good," he whispered. "Keep that strength." Throughout the evening, Lena moved carefully among the guests, aware of cameras and whispers. She saw the subtle glances, the hushed conversations that stopped when she approached, the questions left unasked. Her presence unsettled the polished world, just as Jelani had promised. Later, as Jelani addressed the gala crowd, Lena noticed Carmen speaking with a group of influential business people, her sharp eyes tracking Lena's every move. The tension between them was palpable, a silent battle of influence and perception. Lena realized that she was no longer just a girl from a village. She was now a symbol, a wild card in a game of power and control. After the event, Jelani guided Lena and Tiana back to his apartment. "You did well tonight," he said quietly. "You stayed true to yourself. That alone makes a difference. Victor's people will notice, and it unsettles them. You've made them uncertain." Lena exhaled, exhaustion mingling with pride. "It doesn't feel like enough." "It is enough," Jelani said, his dark eyes meeting hers. "You've already changed the rules, and that's the first step." Outside, the city lights glittered like stars fallen to earth, indifferent to the small struggles within its walls. Lena realized that the path ahead would be dangerous, complex, and unpredictable. But she also understood that courage, loyalty, and determination could carve out spaces of safety and influence, even in a world that seemed entirely against her. And for the first time, Lena felt the full weight of the choice she had made. To step into Jelani's world, protect her village, and embrace the unknown storm that now surrounded them both. The city had a rhythm of its own, one that Lena felt pulsing through the marble floors and glass walls of King Holdings. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. A world of power, wealth, and silent battles fought in whispers, contracts, and carefully calculated glances. Lena had never imagined herself here. Yet now, every step she took mattered. Every movement could shift the balance. The morning after the gala, Jelani gathered Lena and Tiana in his office. The city lights filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. "Victor Hale is already recalibrating," he said quietly, his hands braced on the desk. "He knows I brought you into the city. He knows you can't be predicted. And that terrifies him." Lena frowned. "What does he want exactly?" "Control," Jelani said, voice low. "He doesn't need to destroy everything. He just wants leverage, ownership, influence. And right now, you are leverage he cannot manipulate. That makes you the threat." Tiana's voice was firm. "So what do we do?" "We plan," Jelani replied. "We anticipate, we protect, and we act only when necessary. The village and my life are both at stake. And that means every decision, every action, must be precise." Lena felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. She had faced the river, pulled a life from death with nothing but courage and a wooden stick. But this was different. This was a world where danger came dressed in suits and polite smiles, where one wrong step could undo everything. That afternoon, Carmen St. James appeared again, her expression unreadable. She moved through the office with calculated grace, addressing Jelani with practiced politeness, while her eyes never left Lena. "I trust you found the gala enlightening," she said smoothly. Lena held her ground. "I did. It showed me how much appearances matter here." Carmen's lips curved slightly. "And yet, appearances can be deceiving." "Yes," Lena said quietly, "and so can people." A subtle tension hung in the room as Carmen studied Lena, clearly surprised by her confidence. Jelani noticed it too. "She doesn't like that you're here," he said softly, once Carmen had left. "Why?" Lena asked. "Because you cannot be predicted, and unpredictability is dangerous to people who thrive on control," Jelani explained. Victor Hale, Carmen, the board. They all expect me to be isolated, obedient, and manageable. You disrupt that expectation." Lena felt a thrill of determination mixed with fear. She had already altered Jelani's world once by saving him. Now, she realized, she could protect not just him, but the village by being herself, undaunted, resolute, unpredictable. By evening, Jelani and Lena began reviewing Victor Hale's moves, tracing papers, emails, and subtle shifts in influence. It was a web of control and manipulation, and Lena's mind worked to untangle it. Each connection she identified, each weak point she noticed, gave her a small sense of power. Power she had never known she could wield. When she returned to the apartment late that night, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, Lena paused by the window, staring at the streets below. Mavuno village felt a lifetime away, yet its people, its river, and her grandmother's safety were at the center of her decisions. She realized that courage was not just about facing danger, it was about responsibility, strategy, and heart. And Lena had all three. The storm was coming, Jelani had said, and she now understood what he meant. But she also understood that storms could be weathered. With courage, loyalty, and careful planning, even the strongest forces could be resisted. The city around them moved fast, indifferent, ruthless. But Lena was no longer a girl pulled from the river. She was a guardian, a strategist, and a force that could change the rules of the game. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that Victor Hale would soon learn just how powerful a village girl's courage could be. The next morning, the city seemed sharper, colder somehow. Lena felt it the moment she stepped onto the street outside Jelani's apartment. Cars moving faster, the crowd denser, and every passerby focused on their own path. Yet she could feel the subtle currents of observation. The way people glanced at her, sometimes too long, too calculating. Victor Hale's reach was everywhere, even here. Jelani arrived shortly after, dressed in a crisp dark suit, the weight of responsibility evident in the tension of his shoulders. "We have to act carefully today," he said quietly. "Victor is testing boundaries. He's probing our strategies, seeing where we're vulnerable." Lena nodded, determination set in her eyes. "Then we don't give him a chance. We control the game." Their first move was a carefully arranged meeting with city officials regarding the zoning of the riverlands near Mavuno village. Jelani's presence alone made them cautious, but Lena's involvement added a layer of unpredictability they couldn't anticipate. "Ms. Adebayo," one official said, glancing at her hesitantly, "your insight into the village. It's unusual for someone of your background to speak here." Lena held her posture, voice calm but firm. "I may be from a village, but I know its people, its value, and its rights. And I won't stand by while outside interests claim what is ours without proper consideration." The room fell silent. Even the most seasoned bureaucrats were taken aback by her clarity and confidence. Jelani's hand brushed hers briefly under the table, a silent acknowledgement of her strength. After the meeting, Lena and Jelani returned to the apartment. Both exhausted, but aware they had planted the first seeds of resistance. But the sense of accomplishment was fleeting. By evening, Carmen St. James arrived again, her expression carefully controlled, though Lena could see the sharp edge beneath the surface. "Jelani," she said smoothly, "we need to discuss your public responsibilities. And Miss Adebayo." Her gaze sharpened. "Your presence is unusual," Lena stood firm. "I am here because the village and my family's safety matter, and I will not be sidelined for appearances or convenience." Carmen's lips pressed into a thin line. "Very well," she said, her tone calm, but warning clear. "But know this, the city does not forgive unpredictability, and it does not forget." Later that night, Jelani and Lena reviewed Victor Hale's latest maneuvers. Subtle threats, carefully crafted documents, and influence peddling that could undermine the village's legal standing if left unchecked. The web of control was growing, but Lena's mind, sharpened by courage and observation, began to trace the weak points. "Victor relies on predictability," Jelani explained. "Every move, every hesitation can be anticipated. You, Lena, disrupt that. And disruption forces him to act rashly. That's when we gain the advantage." Lena studied the documents, tracing the lines between officials, developers, and investors. Each connection revealed leverage, each flaw a potential opening. For the first time, she saw how the courage that saved a life in a river could now protect an entire village. By midnight, Lena sat by the window, the city lights reflecting off the polished streets far below. Her mind traced plans, strategies, and contingencies. She realized that courage alone would not be enough here. It would take strategy, patience, and resolve. The storm had arrived, Victor Hale's shadow stretching into both city and village, but Lena no longer felt powerless. She had faced the river, pulled a life from its depths, and now she faced a world of wealth, influence, and danger. And she knew deep inside that no amount of control or power could match the determination of a girl willing to fight for what she loved. Somewhere, far beyond the city streets, the river flowed silently, carrying with it the memory of courage and the promise of protection. Lena knew that as long as she remained vigilant, unpredictable, and true to herself, the village, and Jelani, would have a chance. The following morning, the city felt like a labyrinth. Lena moved with purpose beside Jelani, navigating streets that seemed alive, flowing with people and energy. Every glance felt measured, every step a potential observation point. She knew that Victor Hale's network could be watching, waiting for a misstep. Jelani guided her to a private conference room in King Holdings, where lawyers and advisors were already gathered. "Today," he said quietly, "we confront their first formal attempt to challenge the Riverland zoning. Victor Hale's team has submitted objections. They're testing the legal waters to see how far they can push." Lena took a deep breath. "Then we respond, clearly and strongly. No hesitation." The meeting began. Papers were spread across the polished table, filled with legal jargon designed to intimidate. Lena studied the documents, spotting inconsistencies and gaps that Jelani's team had missed. When it was her turn to speak, she leaned forward, voice calm but firm. Victor Hale's submission relies on assumptions that do not reflect the village's rights or the facts on the ground, she said. "We have evidence, testimonies, and environmental records that prove the Riverland belongs under proper consideration, not arbitrary claims." A murmur ran through the room. Jelani's lawyers exchanged surprised glances. Even seasoned advisors weren't used to being challenged by someone outside the city system. Lena's eyes remained steady on the lead attorney from Victor Hale's side, who looked visibly unsettled. By late afternoon, the room had shifted. Victor's legal advantage had been weakened, his assumptions exposed. Lena's presence, courage, and clarity had forced him to rethink his strategy. Jelani placed a hand over hers briefly, a silent acknowledgement of her impact. After the meeting, as they walked back through the city streets, Lena felt the weight of what had just happened. "I didn't know I could do that," she admitted softly. "You've always had it in you," Jelani said. "Courage, intelligence, and determination. The river didn't create it, it revealed it. And the city is no different from the river. It tests, it pulls, but it also shows who can survive." That evening, Carmen St. James appeared once more, her expression carefully neutral, but sharp as a blade. "Miss Adebayo," she said, voice smooth, "you are persistent. Most would not have survived this day, most would have faltered under scrutiny." "I'm still here," Lena replied, voice steady, "and I will continue to be." Carmen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Be careful," she said, before leaving the room. Jelani watched her go, tension radiating from his posture. "Victor will escalate next," he warned, "and Carmen is just the first wave. They don't respond well to unpredictability, and that will make them dangerous." Lena nodded, resolve hardening. "Then we prepare, anticipate, and stay ahead. We don't let fear control our actions." That night, Lena sat by the window of Jelani's apartment, staring out at the city lights. Mavuno village felt a lifetime away, yet its people, its river, and her grandmother's health were at the forefront of her mind. The city was a storm, but she had already faced rivers that could kill. She knew she could weather this storm too, and far below, the streets pulsed with life, indifferent yet connected to every decision made inside those walls. Lena understood the truth Jelani had been teaching her. Courage, strategy, and unpredictability could tip the balance in a world built on control. Somewhere, deep in the heart of the city, Victor Hale's network stirred. They had underestimated a village girl, and that mistake would ripple through every plan they had laid. Lena was no longer just a survivor. She was a force. By the next morning, Lena knew the city had changed around them. The streets no longer felt neutral or indifferent. They were charged, as if every passerby carried invisible eyes, every honking car a reminder of Victor Hale's reach. Lena's thoughts kept returning to Mavuno village and Grandma Evelyn, and to the river that had started it all. The city was sharp, powerful, and dangerous, but she was no longer the girl from the village who could be ignored. Jelani appeared at the apartment door, his posture tense, his expression unreadable. "Victor is escalating," he said quietly. "He's moved beyond papers. He's testing physical boundaries now, sending people to intimidate and observe. You need to be careful." Lena nodded, fists tightening. "Then we show them they can't intimidate us. We stand firm." By midday, an unexpected visitor arrived at King Holdings. A man in a tailored suit, eyes sharp, presence commanding. He introduced himself with polite civility, but Lena noticed immediately the subtle threat in his posture. The way he measured the room, the occupants. "I am Isaac Mbata," he said. "I represent interests concerned with King Holdings' recent decisions regarding Riverland zoning. I would like to speak with Mr. Jelani King, privately." Jelani exchanged a glance with Lena, subtle but full of meaning. "Not alone," he said firmly. Isaac's eyes flicked toward Lena. "And who is this young lady?" "She's my guest," Jelani replied, calm but unwavering. "She will be present." The tension was immediate. Isaac's polite smile didn't reach his eyes. Every word he spoke was measured, careful, but the threat behind it was unmistakable. He spoke of development, potential partnerships, and opportunities that sounded beneficial, but carried heavy undertones of control and influence. Lena listened, noting every word, every pause, every attempt at manipulation. When he attempted to subtly belittle her, Lena held her ground. "I am here to ensure fairness and transparency. Any attempt to manipulate the village or its people will not succeed while I am involved." Isaac's eyes narrowed. "You are bold," he said. "I am not bold," Lena replied firmly. "I am protective of what I care for, and I refuse to be controlled or intimidated." Jelani placed a steadying hand on her shoulder, his gaze locked on Isaac. "You underestimate her," he said quietly, "and that will be your mistake." Isaac excused himself politely, but left the warning in the air. Victor Hale's influence would grow, and the next encounter would not be so civil. Lena and Jelani both understood the meaning behind the visit. The city's rules were clear, power moves were relentless, and hesitation was costly. That evening, Lena sat by the window, the city sprawling endlessly below. Her mind raced with plans and contingencies. She thought of the river, of her grandmother, of Mavuno village, and realized that courage alone was not enough. It would take strategy, foresight, and collaboration. Jelani joined her quietly, standing beside her. "You've done more than I could have imagined," he said softly. "You've faced the river, the city, and now the first wave of Victor's tests. You've held your ground." Lena glanced at him, determination burning in her eyes. "And we will continue to hold our ground. For the village, for you, for everything we care about." He nodded. "The storm is coming, Lena, but storms can be weathered, and sometimes they reveal the strength you never knew you had. You've already proven that." Outside, the city glittered like 1,000 stars, indifferent yet connected to every decision made within those walls. Lena understood the truth Jelani had been teaching her. Courage, intelligence, and unpredictability could tilt the balance in a world built on control. Somewhere in the shadows, Victor Hale's operatives were mobilizing. They had underestimated the girl from Mavuno village, and that mistake would have consequences they could not foresee. Lena was no longer just a survivor. She was a guardian, a strategist, and a force ready to protect both her village and the man whose life she had saved in the river. The first wave had passed, but the storm was only beginning. The morning air in the city carried a chill that Lena could feel even through the warmth of Jelani's apartment. She had grown accustomed to the city's pulse, the constant hum of movement, the subtle watchfulness of those who held power. But today felt heavier. Every glance, every passing figure seemed sharper, more deliberate, as if the storm Jelani had warned about was no longer approaching. It had arrived. Jelani entered, his expression taut. "Victor is accelerating," he said quietly. "He's no longer relying solely on influence or documents. He's testing us physically, socially, psychologically. His agents are already active in the city, and they're looking for weaknesses." Lena's jaw tightened. "Then we don't give him one. We anticipate, we act, and we protect the village and everything he's trying to control." By mid-morning, their first direct encounter arrived. Lena and Jelani were at a private meeting with city officials regarding the final zoning decisions for the Riverlands. The room was quiet, polished, and tense. Papers lined the table, each document carefully prepared. But Lena noticed subtle indicators that Victor's influence was seeping in. Offhand comments, pointed questions, glances that lingered too long. One official cleared his throat. "Miss Adebayo," he said, eyes flicking briefly to Jelani. "Some concerns have been raised regarding the village's readiness for certain developments. Are you confident in the information you've provided?" Lena's eyes met his, steady and unwavering. "I am. The village is prepared. The Riverland is their livelihood, their home, and their rights are documented. Attempts to undermine that through intimidation or paperwork will not succeed while I am present." A tense silence filled the room. Jelani gave her a subtle nod of approval. Even seasoned city officials seemed taken aback by her clarity and courage. By afternoon, their apartment received a sharp, unexpected knock. Lena opened the door to see a courier holding an envelope marked with Victor Hale's insignia. She hesitated, the weight of the symbol pressing against her chest. Jelani gestured for her to open it. Inside were photographs. Clear images of Mavuno village, the river, and even Grandma Evelyn's home. A note accompanied them. "You are overstepping. Withdraw, or the consequences will reach beyond the city." Lena's fingers tightened around the paper, her heart racing but her resolve unbroken. "He's trying to intimidate us," she said firmly. "But it won't work. Not now, not ever." Jelani placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "We expected escalation, Lena, and this is it. Victor is no longer subtle. But he underestimates you, and he will pay for that miscalculation." That night, Lena could hardly sleep. The city lights glittered below, and she thought of the river, of the village, of her grandmother, and of the man she had saved. Each memory fueled her determination. Courage alone had saved a life once. Now courage and strategy would protect an entire community. By dawn, Lena had sketched plans, strategies, and contingencies. She and Jelani reviewed them meticulously, mapping every potential move Victor could make. They began coordinating with trusted allies in the city, using Lena's unpredictability as a tool, turning Victor's reliance on control against him. For the first time, Lena felt fully empowered, not just as a village girl or as someone who had saved a stranger from a river, but as a strategist and protector in a city built on influence, money, and unyielding rules. Outside, the city moved in relentless motion, oblivious to the battle unfolding in polished offices and quiet streets. Victor Hale's network was mobilizing, his agents preparing for the next strike. But Lena was ready, her courage tempered by insight, strategy, and an unshakable determination to protect the village that had raised her, the river that had tested her, and the man whose life she had once saved. And somewhere, far away from the city lights, the river flowed quietly, carrying with it the memory of a village girl who had refused to let fear dictate her actions. The storm had begun, but Lena was no longer a girl waiting for rescue. She was a force, and the city would soon learn that courage, strategy, and loyalty could not be controlled by even the most powerful. By mid-morning, the tension in the city was palpable. Lena and Jelani moved quickly through King Holdings, reviewing their security measures and mapping every possible avenue Victor Hale's agents could use to infiltrate their plans. Lena's mind raced, cataloging every detail from the photographs they had received, considering how each piece of information could be used against them. Jelani's phone buzzed with encrypted messages. Victor is acting faster than we anticipated, he said quietly, eyes scanning the screen. He's mobilizing local assets, people who will try to pressure officials and sway public opinion. We need to counteract immediately. Lena nodded, determination hardening. Then we act before they do. We can't wait for threats to arrive. We need to anticipate every move. Their first action was to meet with city officials who had previously shown signs of hesitation under Victor A.'s influence. Lena's presence and unwavering confidence lent weight to their arguments. She spoke directly about the river, the village, and the people whose livelihoods were at stake. Each statement was clear, firm, and strategic, leaving little room for manipulation. By late afternoon, Jelani received confirmation. Victor's agents had attempted to approach key officials, but Lena's proactive engagement had thwarted their influence. Yet the victory was brief. An urgent call came from the village. Grandma Evelyn's caretaker reported unusual activity near the riverbank. A group of unfamiliar men surveying the land, asking questions about the village's routines and the river's boundaries. Lena's heart sank. The storm had reached Mavuno village. "We need to go," Lena said immediately, voice sharp. "We cannot wait. If they make a move there, it could endanger everyone." Jelani nodded, calling Daras and a small, trusted team. "We'll travel carefully. Victor is watching, but he won't anticipate speed, combined with strategy." By dusk, Lena, Jelani, and their small team were on the road to Mavuno village. The journey was tense. Every passing vehicle, every roadside shadow felt like a potential threat. Lena's mind remained focused, planning contingencies even as the familiar sights of the village approached. When they arrived, the scene was tense but contained. The unfamiliar men had been seen by villagers and quickly left, likely sensing the protective vigilance that Jelani's team projected. Lena moved through the village, checking on homes, the river, and the small clinic. Her eyes settled on Grandma Evelyn, who smiled weakly but firmly at her. "You've grown," Grandma said quietly, her hand resting briefly on Lena's arm. "Not just in courage, but in strategy and wisdom. The river did not break you, it forged you." Lena felt a surge of determination. "And I won't let them take this village. Not now, not ever." That night, Lena and Jelani worked together, mapping Victor Hale's next potential moves. Every agent, every ally, and every influence channel was considered. Lena's insight into unpredictability became the cornerstone of their strategy, anticipating moves that Victor would not foresee, exploiting weaknesses in his assumptions, and preparing the village to withstand pressure. By the time the stars rose over Mavuno village, Lena had fully embraced her new role. She was no longer the girl pulled from a river, no longer an outsider navigating a world of polished suits and ruthless ambition. She was a guardian, a strategist, and a force determined to protect her people, her home, and the man whose life she had once saved. The storm was here, and its first violent gusts had already tested them, but Lena knew this. Courage, intelligence, and unpredictability were weapons Victor Hale could not anticipate. And with those tools, she and Jelani were ready to face whatever came next. The sun had barely risen over Mavuno village when Lena was already awake, moving through the small paths with quiet urgency. Her eyes scanned every tree line, every riverbank bend, every shadow cast by the morning light. Victor Hale's agents were close. She could feel it, their presence an invisible pressure pressing against the village's calm. Jelani arrived moments later, alert and tense. "We've received intelligence that Victor's men plan a direct incursion today," he said. "They intend to pressure officials, intimidate villagers, and gather unauthorized information. We cannot let that happen." Lena's jaw tightened. "Then we stop them before they act. We don't react. We control the situation." They mobilized quickly. Daras and a small, trusted team positioned themselves at strategic points: the river crossings, the village edges, and the main road. Villagers, already aware of the threat, were briefed calmly by Jelani and Lena, who had learned the delicate balance of instilling caution without panic. By mid-morning, the first signs of Victor's agents appeared. 4 men in dark clothing approached the village perimeter, their expressions sharp, surveying the area as if measuring vulnerability. Lena stepped forward, calm and commanding. "You are not welcome here," she called, her voice carrying across the open space. "Leave now. or you will answer to the village and its protectors." The men paused, exchanging brief glances. One raised a hand subtly, a signal unseen by villagers. Jelani moved forward beside Lena, his presence authoritative. "You've been warned," he said firmly. "Turn back or face consequences." A tense moment stretched, the air thick with anticipation. Victor's agents were testing them, but Lena had learned to read hesitation. She noticed the slight shift in the lead man's stance, the brief uncertainty that revealed the cracks in their coordination. With a calm, precise gesture, Lena signaled Daras and the team. The perimeter tightened, villagers moved discreetly to safe positions, and the men found themselves encircled by an organized, vigilant force. Their confident posture faltered. "You underestimated this village," Lena said, stepping closer, her presence unwavering. "And you underestimated me." The lead man's jaw tightened, but he signaled retreat. "We'll return," he muttered under his breath, before turning and disappearing down the road. Lena let out a slow breath, her heart still racing, but her resolve strengthened. Jelani placed a hand on her shoulder. "You handled that brilliantly. Your strategy and decisiveness kept everyone safe. Victor won't forget this." By evening, the village was quiet again, though tension lingered like a low hum. Lena walked to the riverbank, the familiar sound of flowing water bringing a moment of solace. She thought of how far she had come. From the girl who had risked everything to save a stranger, to the protector and strategist who now defended an entire village. Jelani joined her, leaning against a tree. "Victor will escalate further," he said softly. "But we've proven something important today. Courage, combined with strategy, can repel even the most confident threats." Lena nodded. "And the village, the river, and everything we protect, they are not just memories. They are our strength." The river flowed steadily, silently witnessing the evolution of a girl who had once been unknown, powerless, and untested. Now, she was a force, unyielding, strategic, and fearless. The storm was far from over, but Lena had learned to stand firm, anticipate every move, and protect what mattered most. Outside, the city waited, unaware that a village girl had become the unexpected thorn in Victor Hale's plans. And in the distance, far beyond the city's glare, the river carried the promise that courage, intelligence, and loyalty could resist even the most relentless storm. The city felt darker that evening, shadows stretching unnaturally across glass towers as if anticipating the chaos Victor Hale intended to unleash. Lena sat in Jelani's office, reviewing communications and the latest intelligence reports. Every message, every subtle alert, felt like a puzzle piece in a game where the stakes were life and survival, not just for her and Jelani, but for Mavuno village itself. Jelani entered quietly, his brow furrowed. "Victor is planning something bigger," he said. "He's consolidating resources, reaching out to political allies, and preparing for a public challenge that could force the village to cede control. This is no longer just intimidation. It's a campaign." Lena's fingers drummed on the polished table. "Then we prepare for every angle, every ally he has, every route he could take, we anticipate it. We take the initiative rather than waiting for his moves." That night, they began coordinating with trusted city contacts, lawyers, local leaders, and a network of allies who had quietly resisted Victor's influence in the past. Lena's role became central. Her perspective as someone from the village, someone unpredictable to city power brokers, gave them an advantage. She suggested maneuvers and contingencies that Jelani's team had not considered, exploiting Victor's reliance on conventional tactics and predictability. Meanwhile, in Mavuno village, Lena arranged protective measures. Dara's and Jelani's team stayed close, and she personally briefed the villagers on safety protocols, emphasizing calm and vigilance. She moved through the village with quiet authority, ensuring every detail was accounted for, from securing the riverbanks to monitoring strangers who lingered near the perimeter. By early morning, Victor Hale had deployed a team of city operatives to approach the village again, this time using the guise of official inspection and development consultation. Lena anticipated this move. She had already positioned allies strategically and communicated clear instructions. No one enters without verification. The operatives arrived, confident and suited, expecting compliance. Lena stepped forward, her posture commanding. "You will not proceed," she said clearly. "This village has rights, protections, and people who will not be intimidated. Leave, or face consequences." For a moment, they hesitated, uncertain. Lena's voice was steady, her presence unwavering, and Jelani's team flanked her silently, but decisively. The operatives exchanged glances, realizing that control was slipping from their grasp. "You are bold," the lead man said cautiously. "Victor will not be pleased." "Victor underestimates the village," Lena replied. "And he underestimates me. Do not make the mistake of testing either." They left, unwilling to escalate further in the face of organized resistance. Lena exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly, but her mind remained alert. That afternoon, Jelani pulled her aside. "Victor will escalate even more," he said quietly. "This time, expect attempts to manipulate public perception, media campaigns, and perhaps even legal maneuvering to force concessions." Lena nodded, resolve hardening. "Then we fight with clarity, strategy, and courage. The village and the river will not be lost, and neither will we be broken." As dusk fell over Mavuno village, the river reflected the fading light, calm and steady. Lena stood on the bank, the wind brushing her face, a reminder of the first day she had saved Jelani from the river's fury. Now the stakes were higher, but the courage that had carried her then continued to guide her. The storm of Victor Hale's making had not broken them. Instead, it had revealed the strength, strategy, and determination of a village girl who had become more than anyone, especially Victor, expected. Lena was no longer merely surviving. She was leading, protecting, and shaping the future of both the village and the man whose life had been entrusted to her bravery. The city, the river, and the village were all watching. And Lena was ready. The attack did not come with noise or violence. It came quietly, wrapped in words, documents, and smiling faces. Lena learned that morning that Victor Hale's most dangerous weapon was patience. By the time the sun rose over Mavuno village, the damage had already begun. A government notice was delivered just after dawn. It was stamped, signed, and official. Temporary suspension of land use pending environmental reassessment. The words were polite, but the meaning was cruel. Fishing along the river was halted. Farming near the banks was restricted. Any gathering near the water required authorization. The village panicked. Men argued in low voices. Women clutched papers they could not fully understand. Elders shook their heads, knowing exactly what this meant. Starve them slowly. Break them without force. Lena stood in the center of it all, holding the notice with steady hands. Her heart burned, but her voice did not shake. "This is not the end," she said firmly. "This is pressure, and pressure only works when we bend." Jelani arrived shortly after, his expression dark as he read the document. "Victor is forcing a legal chokehold," he said quietly. "He wants the village desperate enough to sign away their rights." "He won't get that," Lena replied. "Not from us." By midday, city media began circling. Small vans parked at the edge of the road. Reporters spoke into cameras, framing the story carefully. "Controversy grows around rural river settlement," one voice announced. "Questions raised about land ownership, safety, and outside influence." Outside influence. Lena knew exactly who they meant. Carmen St. James appeared on every screen that afternoon. Elegant, composed, sympathetic. "Julian has always had a soft heart," Carmen said gently. "But powerful men can be manipulated. I fear he is being taken advantage of by people who don't understand the consequences of resisting development." Lena turned off the radio with a sharp click. "They're painting me as the problem," she said quietly. Jelani's jaw tightened. "They're painting you as leverage." That evening, Victor made his move. A legal injunction was filed against King Holdings, accusing Julian of conflict of interest and unethical interference in rural zoning disputes. If it held, Julian would be forced to publicly distance himself from the village or risk losing control of his company. The room went silent as the news settled. "So this is it," Lena said softly. "He's trying to make you choose." Jelani met her gaze. Victor believes power only exists in isolation. He thinks if he separates us, we collapse. And if he succeeds? Lena asked. Jelani didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was honest. I could lose everything. Lena looked down at her hands, scarred from the river, steady from resolve. Then let him try to take it, but I won't walk away. That night, Lena stood before the villagers under lantern light. She told them everything. The pressure, the media, lies, the risk. If anyone wants to leave, I won't blame you, she said. But if we stand together, we do it with truth, not fear. No one moved. An elder stepped forward first, then another, then Tiana, then the fishermen, the mothers. The children stood behind them all. This is our home, the elder said simply. We don't sell our roots. Far away in the city, Victor Hale watched the same footage with narrowed eyes. They're still standing, his assistant said carefully. Victor smiled coldly. Good, then we move to phase 2. Back in the village, Lena felt it in her bones. The calm before something heavier, something sharper. She had once pulled a man from a river with nothing but a wooden stick and courage. Now she was holding back an empire, and she was not letting go. The city woke to controlled chaos. Headlines flooded screens, phones and radios before the sun fully rose. Julian King's face appeared everywhere, paired with carefully chosen words that twisted truth into doubt. Billionaire heir under investigation for abuse of influence. Rural land dispute exposes emotional involvement. Questions rise about stability of King Holdings' leadership. Lena stood silently in Jelani's office, watching the screen as commentators debated a version of her life they had never lived. She was no longer invisible. She was a headline, and that terrified the city more than it admitted. This is the public squeeze, Jelani said calmly. Victor wants to corner us, where every move costs something. And what does he want you to do? Lena asked quietly. Jelani met her eyes. He wants me to denounce you, publicly. Distance myself from the village. Say I was manipulated. The words hit her harder than she expected. If you don't? She asked. I lose the board, he said honestly, possibly the company. Silence stretched between them. Lena turned away, walking toward the window. Far below, people rushed through streets that had never cared who she was until power decided she mattered. Then do it, she said suddenly. Jelani frowned. What? Protect the company, Lena said, voice steady but low. Say whatever you need to say. I didn't save you so you could burn everything for me. Jelani stepped closer. Lena! She turned sharply. You think I came this far not knowing sacrifice? Where I come from, love doesn't survive without it. The door opened before he could answer. Darius entered, tense. Victor has filed a second motion, emergency removal vote. They're forcing it within 48 hours. Jelani closed his eyes briefly. Lena inhaled deeply. Then we don't wait. That afternoon, Lena did something Victor never anticipated. She spoke, not in boardrooms, not behind glass. She went live. With Darius's help, a simple broadcast was arranged. No makeup, no script, just Lena, seated beneath a tree beside the river in Mavuno village. My name is Lena Adebayo, she said into the camera. I am from this village. I pulled a man from this river because he was drowning, not because of who he was. Images followed. The river, the clinic, the villagers. Grandma Evelyn's fragile smile. I did not ask for power. I did not ask for money. I asked for dignity. And now powerful people want to take our land because they believe silence is easier than truth. The video spread faster than Victor expected. By nightfall, public opinion cracked. Comments poured in. Support followed. Questions turned toward Victor Hale. In his office, Victor watched the broadcast with narrowed eyes. She's dangerous, his assistant whispered. Victor smiled thinly. No, she's honest. And honesty disrupts systems built on fear. Back in the village, Lena sat beside Grandma Evelyn as the night settled. You were never meant to stay small, Grandma said softly. Your mother fought quietly. You fight in daylight. Lena swallowed. Did she lose? Grandma squeezed her hand. No, she survived, and now so will you. Far away, Jelani stood alone in his apartment, watching Lena's broadcast replay. For the first time, Victor was reacting instead of controlling. And for the first time since the river, Jelani understood something clearly. Lena was no longer protecting him. She was leading the fight. The boardroom at King Holdings was silent in a way that felt unnatural. Glass walls reflected the city skyline, but inside, the air was heavy with anticipation. Jelani stood at the head of the table, his expression controlled, though every instinct in him warned that this meeting had already been decided before anyone sat down. Victor Hale arrived last. He walked in calmly, confident, carrying no papers, no device, no visible weapon. He did not need one. The room itself was his instrument. "Let's begin," Victor said smoothly, taking his seat. "Time is valuable." The chairman cleared his throat. "We are here to address concerns regarding Mr. Julian King's recent conduct and potential conflicts of interest." Victor folded his hands. "I'll be direct. Julian's emotional involvement with a rural land dispute has compromised this company. Investors are nervous, regulators are watching, and public sympathy is volatile." A screen lit up behind him. Lena's face appeared. Clips from her broadcast played, selectively edited. Her words cut short, her expressions frozen at moments that looked defiant rather than truthful. "She has turned a corporate matter into a personal crusade," Victor continued, "and Julian allowed it." Murmurs rippled around the table. Jelani remained still. "She told the truth." Victor smiled. "Truth without control is chaos." Then Victor delivered the blow. "I move that Julian King be temporarily removed as acting head of King Holdings, effective immediately, pending investigation." Silence. Then a voice spoke. "Seconded." Jelani turned slowly. It was Darius. The betrayal landed like a physical strike. Jelani's eyes narrowed. "You knew," he said quietly. Darius didn't meet his gaze. "This is bigger than loyalty." The vote proceeded quickly. Hands rose, one by one. The decision was unanimous. Julian King was removed. By the time Jelani stepped out of the building, the news had already broken. Across the city, headlines exploded. Board removes Julian King amid ethics storm power shift at King Holdings. Victor Hale gains temporary oversight authority. In Mavuno village, Lena heard the news from a crackling radio. She closed her eyes slowly. So this was Victor's answer. Grandma Evelyn watched her carefully. "This was always going to cost something," she said softly. Lena stood. "Then it's my turn to pay." Back in the city, Victor stood alone in the boardroom, gazing out over the skyline. "It's done," his assistant said. Victor nodded. "Remove the king, and the board follows." "But the village?" the assistant asked. Victor's smile thinned. "Now that Julian is gone, she stands alone." He was wrong. That evening, Lena arrived in the city again. Not quietly. She stood on the steps of King Holdings as supporters gathered. Villagers, students, workers. People who had seen her broadcast and recognized something real. Cameras flashed. Microphones extended. Lena spoke clearly. "They can remove a man from a chair," she said, "but they cannot remove the truth." Inside a nearby apartment, Jelani watched the broadcast, his expression unreadable. She had warned him. She had stepped forward. And now, the fight no longer belonged to him. It belonged to her. The rain began softly that night, washing the city streets in silver and shadow. Lena sat alone in a small public archive building, its lights dim and its walls lined with files no one remembered to erase. She had followed a trail of names, dates, and land records that felt too deliberate to be coincidence. It had led her here. The archivist, an elderly man with tired eyes, slid the final folder across the table. "Most people don't ask for files this old," he said quietly. Some truths were buried on purpose. Lena opened the folder with shaking hands. Her mother's name stared back at her. Amara Adebayo. The documents told a story the village had never been allowed to hear. Amara had come to the city 20 years earlier as a legal researcher. She had been brilliant, relentless, and impossible to silence. She had worked on environmental cases, river protections, and land rights, especially cases tied to corporate expansion along waterways. One name appeared again and again: Victor Hale. Lena's breath caught. Amara had discovered irregular land acquisitions along the river near Mavuno village. Shell companies, forged environmental reports, displaced communities disguised as voluntary relocation. Victor had been at the center of it. Amara had filed a formal complaint. Then the case disappeared. So did her career. The file ended with a short note: resigned due to personal circumstances. Returned to village. Lena's hands clenched. That night, she confronted Grandma Evelyn. The old woman listened silently as Lena placed the file on the table. When she finished reading, Grandma closed her eyes slowly. "I hoped you would never find this," she said. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lena asked, her voice breaking. "Because truth can be dangerous," Grandma replied softly. "Your mother didn't lose because she was wrong. She lost because she was alone." Grandma looked at Lena with painful clarity. "Victor didn't just want the land. He wanted silence, and your mother refused to give it." Lena's chest tightened. "Is that why she came back broken?" "She came back alive," Grandma said. "That was her victory." Across the city, Victor sat in his office when the call came. "They accessed archived records," his assistant said carefully. Victor's expression darkened. "Which ones?" "The Adebayo file." For the first time in years, Victor stood abruptly. "So the daughter knows," he said quietly. His assistant swallowed. "Yes." Victor stared out at the rain-slick city. That river should have stayed quiet. Back in the village, Lena stood at the riverbank long after midnight. The water moved steadily, unchanged, patient. "My mother fought you," Lena whispered into the darkness. "And now I will." The truth spread faster than lies ever could. Independent journalists picked up the story. Old colleagues of Amara came forward. Former employees whispered. Evidence resurfaced. Victor Hale's name began to appear not as a savior of development, but as an architect of quiet destruction. Jelani watched the revelations unfold from a distance, pride and fear twisting together in his chest. She had become something Victor could not erase. Lena was no longer fighting for land. She was finishing her mother's war, and this time, she was not alone. The city had not slept. By morning, the truth was everywhere. Screens flashed archived documents, side-by-side comparisons, timelines connecting Victor Hale to land seizures along rivers across the country. The name Amara Adebayo was spoken with a new kind of respect, no longer as a footnote, but as the woman who had tried to stop it before anyone was ready to listen. Victor Hale stood in his office watching it unfold. Every channel, every headline, every analyst suddenly cautious, suddenly distant. The system he had mastered was turning against him. At the same time, Julian King walked into a press hall without security, without notes, and without permission from the board. The room fell silent when he stepped to the podium. Cameras clicked, microphones lifted. "I was removed from my position," Julian began calmly, "because I refused to stay silent." The board members watching from private offices stiffened. Julian continued, his voice steady. "I was told to choose between power and truth. I choose truth." A murmur rippled through the room. "For years, development has been used as a weapon," he said. "Not to build communities, but to erase them. My company benefited from systems I did not question soon enough. That ends now." He paused, then spoke the name Victor had spent decades burying. "Amara Adebayo was right." The effect was immediate. Gasps, movement, messages sent in panic. Julian lifted his eyes. "And so is her daughter." Across the city, Lena watched the broadcast on a small screen in the village clinic, her hands trembling. Not with fear, but with release. Julian wasn't protecting himself anymore. He was standing beside her. In Victor's office, his assistant whispered urgently. "Investors are withdrawing. Regulators are calling. The board is reconsidering." Victor said nothing. His grip tightened slowly on the armrest. "They needed a villain," he said at last, "and she gave them one." "But sir," the assistant said, "they're coming for you." Victor smiled thinly. "Then let them come." That afternoon, The board reconvened in emergency session. This time, Victor's seat remained empty. A legal notice had arrived first. Subpoena, investigation, asset review. Darius did not raise his hand this time. By evening, the injunction against the village was suspended, then reversed. Mavuno village gathered as the announcement came through. Cheers erupted. Tears flowed. Elders held one another in disbelief. Lena stood quietly at the edge of the crowd, watching the river reflect the fading sun. She had not shouted. She had not celebrated. She felt something deeper, completion. Julian arrived just before nightfall, not in a motorcade, not with cameras, just a car, dust on its sides, humility in his posture. He stepped toward Lena slowly. "I should have listened sooner," he said. Lena met his gaze. "You listened when it mattered." They stood together in silence as the village settled around them. Victor Hale sat alone that night for the first time in decades. Power had always obeyed him, until it met truth that refused to bend. And in that quiet, irreversible moment, Victor understood something too late. The river never forgets. The court ruling arrived quietly, without ceremony, but its impact echoed across the nation. The land along the river was declared protected, its ownership restored to the people of Mavuno village, and all future development permanently blocked. The judgment cited environmental manipulation, unlawful acquisition, and deliberate suppression of evidence. For the first time in generations, the river belonged fully to those who lived beside it. Celebration filled the village, but it was not loud. It was the kind of joy that settles slowly, like breath returning after a long struggle. Elders gathered under the acacia tree. Children ran freely along the riverbank. The land, once threatened, seemed to rest. Lena walked among them with quiet steps. Victory had not made her lighter. It had made her honest. She visited her mother's grave at dawn, placing the court document carefully against the stone. "You were right," she whispered. They finally listened. In the city, Julian resigned from the company entirely. He released a public statement accepting responsibility for his silence and pledged his remaining influence to transparent development and community-led planning. His name no longer opened doors easily, but it opened the right ones. Jelani declined every interview offered to him. He returned to the village school, teaching children how to question systems, not just memorize them. He spoke often about courage, but never about himself. Victor Hale faced indictment. His assets were frozen, his properties investigated. Allies disappeared overnight. In private hearings, witnesses spoke of intimidation, pressure, and fear. Victor said little. When he was finally asked if he regretted anything, he paused. "I regret underestimating memory," he said. Lena and Julian met one final time at the river's edge. "This is where it ends for me," Julian said, "and where it begins for you." Lena shook her head gently. "It doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of us." As seasons changed, Mavuno village became a place of learning. Researchers came with permission. Journalists came with respect. The story of Amara Adebayo was taught not as tragedy, but as resistance. Lena remained. She did not seek office. She did not lead movements. She planted trees. She listened. She guarded the river the way her mother once had, with patience and truth. And in doing so, she ensured that what had been buried would never be buried again. Time softened the sharpest edges of memory, but it did not erase them. In Mavuno village, seasons passed with new meaning. The land no longer felt borrowed or threatened, it felt returned. Lena learned what peace truly required. It was not rest, it was care. She helped establish a small environmental learning center near the river, built with local hands and local knowledge. Elders shared oral histories. Children learned how the river's path had shaped the village long before maps existed. Amara Adebayo's name was carved into the foundation stone, not as a monument, but as a reminder. Grandma Evelyn's health faded gently. On quiet afternoons, she sat beneath the acacia tree, watching Lena work. "You finished what she started," she told her one evening. Lena shook her head. "She started what I continue." In the city, Victor Hale stood before a nearly empty courtroom. The empire he once commanded had dissolved into records and testimony. He listened as the judgment was read, his face unreadable. Power had left him, memory had not. When asked if he wished to speak, Victor declined. Some silences no longer belonged to him. Julian moved abroad, working quietly with organizations that prioritized consent over control. He never returned to public life, but letters arrived at the village regularly, updates written with humility instead of authority. Jelani married and stayed in Mavuno. His children played along the river without fear of fences or warnings. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Lena stood at the riverbank alone. She spoke softly, not to the water, but to the space her mother still occupied in her heart. "We're safe now," she said. The river flowed on, unchanged, patient, carrying memory forward without bitterness. Lena understood then that justice was not an ending, it was a responsibility. Years later, the river still moved with the same quiet strength, winding past Mavuno village as it always had. What changed was not the water, but the way people stood beside it. The village had grown, not in size, but in purpose. Children who once watched elders argue over land now studied law, ecology, and history. They returned with knowledge, not ambition. They returned to protect, not to take. Lena had aged into her role without ceremony. She was not called a leader, though people followed her example. She did not stand at the front of crowds. She walked among them, listening, teaching, and reminding everyone that land survives only when memory survives with it. On the anniversary of the court ruling, the village gathered by the river. No speeches were planned, no cameras invited. Elders spoke in turns, sharing stories of displacement, resilience, and return. Each voice mattered, each memory stayed. Lena placed a small wooden marker near the riverbank. It carried no dates, no titles, only one line: "Truth lives where silence ends." Grandma Evelyn passed peacefully that winter, her final days filled with stories and laughter. She left behind not grief, but grounding. The village mourned her, as one mourns a tree that sheltered generations. Far away, Victor Hale lived quietly, his name no longer feared or admired. History remembered him only as a lesson written in the margins. His power dissolved, but the consequences remained, shaping laws meant to prevent his kind from rising again. Julian's letters slowed, then stopped. His work continued elsewhere, unseen and unclaimed. One evening, Lena stood alone by the river as the sun slipped behind the hills. The water reflected the sky in soft gold, carrying forward everything it had witnessed. She closed her eyes and breathed. The fight was over, the work was not, but it no longer felt heavy, it felt shared. And in that shared responsibility, Lena finally understood what her mother had known all along. Some victories are not meant to be owned. They are meant to be protected. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. Stories like this are not just meant to be watched. They are meant to be felt, remembered and shared, because somewhere in the world, someone is still standing beside their own river, waiting for truth to be heard. If you like this story, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share with your friends and family, so you don't have to miss the next powerful story coming your way. Drop a heart in comment, like and subscribe my channel. And visit my channel for more interesting story videos.